Boom. All right, we're in it, and as I've said before, this is new for me, and I'm new for, I'm guessing, a lot of people here. So we're just gonna have fun with it. This is the first time we're getting together for Ventures Kindling, a podcast series about D&D.
Go.
Let's go.
And
How exciting.
before we talk about our topics, I have a little, I don't know, setup here that shows off everyone. Maybe since it's our first topic, and I'm sure like people will be coming back for different episodes, maybe not the same group, but we should introduce ourselves, at least how we want to be known and go by. Like we can just do it in reference to like, you know, our D&D, you know, experience. For instance, I'm Ash. I played D&D for a number of years, and I'm DMing for most of these people here, and being DM'd by at least 2, sometimes 3 of them. Yeah. Nice. Okay. Someone
Why
help
is
me.
Apollo just up there?
Oh my god, this is cool.
Oh, this is amazing. Oh god, that's Dalton.
I have each of your guys' like all the character I got from all your different characters just in the slideshow with your name attached.
Ash, where's my
god.
my what is it? My chibi Dalton.
Your chibi doll, did I add that?
my
I
my
should've.
scratch Dalton.
I'll make sure I added that. But for now, Sapph, why don't you introduce your D&D?
Wow. Wow, segue. Name is Sapph.
Hi, Sapph.
Hi, Scout.
It's like a AA.
What's
AA
thinking about?
I don't know. How long has it been since I've played D&D? I've played D&D 2-ish years? 2-3 years? About. DM for like almost a year, maybe.
Hmm?
I'm a clown. I'm an absolute clown when it comes to both DMing, and I'm known for writing 50-page backstories on my characters and never talking about them.
Nice.
True.
The writer of the group.
Hmm.
Alright, Scout, take it away.
Hey, I'm Scout. I've been playing D&D since Sapph has been DMing. Because my first game was with Sapph. I like to draw D&D characters. I don't know.
Yeah, no, this is pretty good.
I play a lot of barbarians. It's like a guilty pleasure of mine.
You're the barbarian
I
artist.
have a ton of backstory written down.
Yeah, I also like to write, but not as much as Sapph. She's crazy.
I will take
can't
that
write
as a
that much.
compliment, thank you.
It is a compliment.
Alright, Nora.
Oh no.
Bluetooth dies immediately.
Uh-oh, did it actually die?
I think
Oh my
I
god.
actually did. Hello, Nora.
Alright, Chrissy,
I
take us
think I
away.
need to
Oh,
turn
you're
my
good.
hotspot,
Oh, perfect.
but I'm back.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself for episode 1.
Let me just do that really quick.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, I guess it's my turn then.
Yeah.
Some technical difficulties, but I'm Nora. I've been playing D&D for a couple of years. I'm the opposite of them. I'm allergic to writing down my backstories. They just live in my head. But yeah, I've done some playing and some DMing, and D&D's great. Love it. Love talking about it.
Hell yeah.
Thanks.
Chrissy.
Hi, I'm Chrissy. I've been playing D&D. I started a few years ago under Ash, and about a year ago I started my own campaign. And I've been pretty quickly getting into things. My style is usually to come up with a lot of elaborate plans and plots and twists and stuff, and then not really follow it to the end and just kind of leave it all half done, and then wing everything on the fly.
that's the life.
It's the line.
I love that.
I'm also a little allergic to writing things down, but I still come up with plenty of ideas that now I'm starting to get more and more into the creating of my own worlds and stuff.
Nice.
It's been fun.
Alright, color.
Hello, my name is Caller. I also started at the same time as Scout started with under Saph's DMing, and that's been like I think it's been a year since we started. So I have the least experience out of everyone. I think Scout had a couple more campaigns than I have, like during this like past year. I tend to procrastinate, which is something that I try not to anymore. But when I have like a very like a big like moment of inspiration, I tend to write down a bunch of things and draw. Uh, and I just love creating backstories, but I actually haven't like got into the habit of write everything down. So I'm trying to like kind of in a way just shape my own style to put it in a way.
I think like we actually have a pretty good split of people that, actually write their stuff down and people that don't, right? Like I
Two ends of the spectrum.
done both, and I understand, like, holy shit, it's so hard to keep writing until you actually have that inspiration.
Right.
But all right, for the first episode of this podcast, I've titled it Death and its Troublesome Transition. We're talking about character death. And just to cue you in, I named it this title because there's a quote by a author, Isaac Asimov. I forget what he wrote, but he did a bunch of things. And I just want to start off with this quote real quick. Where is it? Life is pleasant, death is peaceful, and it's the transition that's troublesome. Which, I don't know, I think applies very well because, characters being alive is great. Characters that are dead afterwards, they, usually stand for a lot. But it's the dying itself that has both narrative and social impacts. To at least get us rolling a bit, I want to set a foundation, and since we're all play D&D 5e, I want to talk about at least what the baseline death is in D&D 5e. Could anyone help me out and tell me what they know about death as at least the base rules state in D&D 5e?
I actually don't know a lot of the specifics.
It's been so long since I've looked at the handbook.
Yeah.
How does one die if they were to just join a random
I
D&D
have
5e
a
game?
basic idea, even though none of my characters have died yet.
Mm-hmm.
As a team,
But
we can figure this
What
out,
I
I think.
what I understand is that if your hit points get to 0, you need to do like death saving throws, right?
Yes. So once you go
And
unconscious, you have 3 chances.
opportunities.
Yes.
Yeah, you got 3 chances, and if you fail them, obviously you die. But also there's the situation where you have like you get like a critical hit, which is I believe when you're very very close to hitting 0, and the enemy hits like a nat 20 or a very high roll, and they hit you critically, right?
Yeah. So to go
Are
on,
there
like,
rules like doing like more than double the like max HP damage or something like that can kill you outright?
yes.
Yeah, if you go below negative your max HP, or if you
Yeah,
hit
you're
your max
screwed.
HP in the negatives.
Yeah. So to reiterate, there's usually 3 ways to die. One is failing your death saves, either by rolling them yourself or by someone continuing to attack you. And if they attack you within adjacently, they will crit you and fail 2 death saves. There is dying outright in the base rolls, which means you take enough damage that your new health pool would be calculated as negative your max or more, or less, I mean. And thirdly, this is the one not many people realize, right? You die if the DM just has a scenario where, okay, yeah, you're dead, you can't come out of this situation.
Yeah.
PPK.
It's a rough one.
That is a rough one, but it does happen, especially in horror stories.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fair.
But baseline, I think at least, if everyone comes in thinking about that rule set in D&D 5e, that sets at least expectations. I want to transition at least that base set of rules to like both PC and GM expectations. Can anyone want to talk about what their expectation is coming to a game concerning death? Let's say you didn't actually talk to the DM or anything, but what would you expect?
I mean, I can
I-
start.
Yeah.
Oh, do you wanna? Okay.
Go ahead.
If it's not discussed, I'm generally pretty. I assume that it can happen, but I won't assume that it's like a meat grinder kind of game,
Mm-hmm.
and that's partially because the games that I tend to play are more like character story driven and RP based, and so I expect that it's a possibility, but that it's not going to be like the goal of the campaign to have players die.
If you're GMing, that's the same sort of expectation you would like to convey to your players.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I would say as a GM, I'm pretty against character death. I don't really think it adds to the story, and a lot of people, like, they come up with these backstories, they're really attached to their characters, and I don't really want to mess with that. So I guess my default assumption as well going to someone else's game is generally along those lines. Like, I'll make a character with an assumption of they're going to have some growth and they're going to, like, deal with some things over the campaign, and, like, dying before they accomplish that just feels very painful to me. So I would prefer if someone was straight up. If they're going to have something that was a little bit more aggressive, and they'd be more okay with player death, then I'd probably make my character in a way that would kind of respond to that.
I love this because this is one of the reasons I really like talking about character death because of different views, and I definitely agree with quite a few of what you said, Chrissy. But at the same time, I know you're like, yeah, character death doesn't have value narratively as much, whereas I feel like I myself here feel differently.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, because I love controversy because it gives so much discussion. What about everyone else's expectations about death?
For me, I always think that my character is gonna die anyways. Like
Oh,
I always keep the possibility of dying, right? Like in the back of my head. Like I don't feel, especially as Chrissy said, like if you don't talk beforehand, or no, I think this was Nora actually. She mentioned that if you don't discuss with your DM, there's a possibility of like it might not be as hard for you to survive the campaign, but there's always a possibility of you dying, right? And for me, I always keep in mind that your character can die, even though we haven't really discussed in like any current campaigns about the dying, at least in my case. But yeah, the character can die, and that's just, in a way, I feel like that's part of like the character's backstory as well. Like it's like such his life that you have such a in-depth character with all of its flaws and all of its visions and goals in life, and then out of nowhere you end up dying, right? But that's kind of like how I feel like in ways you can take that and eventually turn into some sort of legacy, right?
I like that word, legacy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I don't go into games expecting my character to get killed off, but I just like hope that if they do die, they leave some sort of legacy, at least with the players, if not the world itself.
What about you, Sapph? You have plenty of tragic backstories, but you go thinking your character's gonna die.
Wow, the subtle call out. I see you there. Well, I do like appeal to the idea of character death. Like, yes, death, but at the same time, like when I make my characters, like I expect there to be some sort of growth. So while yes, I do like the idea of character death and how much of an impact it leaves, not just to my character, but like to the narrative as well. I'd still think that there should be at least some room or time for this like character to develop, lest I choose to go into battle, be a kamikaze and explode. Yeah, so I don't know, like it's not an easy concept to deal with, I think, but I'd say that like for me at the very least, I'd like some time with my character before I get stabbed in the chest.
No, I agree. Death for me has narrative value, but before we later go into does it or does it not, if a character's gonna die either with me as a GM or me as a player, right? I think 3 things are important to consider. 1, right, is it after a time of you've given the character a chance to grow and come into themselves. It sucks the most to die at level 1 when you bait all of this stuff and then you just die because shit, rolls sucked, or that's how it worked out. And
For 1 death save.
yeah, that 1 death save out of nowhere, right? If it makes sense where you're in a situation where you're falling and then that one just icing on the cake, makes sense. But then all of a sudden, I don't know, it doesn't feel like you're giving a character a chance to grow into that death. You want a just death for the story. In addition, that's narrative value wise, you want to make sure the player as a DM that they have agency. You don't want them to die without feeling like they were in control of the events leading to their death. And then last but not least, I very much like the word legacy, right? You want to have their death to have weight even after it's already transpired. You want other party members to remember them, as well as their death to have meant something in the moment, in that it wasn't in vain or it wasn't for no reason.
Definitely. And I think what's, I guess, seems the most difficult to me with handling this is, even if you have different playstyles, I think it's totally valid, obviously, if you want to go into a campaign and you don't expect your character to die. But I'm also curious what people think about handling that with the suspension of disbelief. So I've had DMs who are pretty clear, who will actively say, oh, I don't want to kill you guys, or kind of let on when they're fudging their combat to not kill us, and that's really frustrating to me because it very much breaks immersion, I guess. But at the same time, if you're running or playing in a campaign where characters aren't necessarily meant to die, how do you guys feel about handling keeping stakes while also making sure characters have time to grow?
I think that's interesting, because in that situation, I don't think I would mind. Oh, he's making the encounter easier and nerfing the damage so we don't die. That actually, I don't think would break my suspension of disbelief. I kind of go the opposite way in the campaign I'm running right now. It's my first time making anything by myself, and I really have no idea how to balance it, so a lot of my monsters actually don't have the stats completely figured out. It's kind of during the campaign, I'll be oh, they seem to be about this strong, so I think I can make them this strong, and I might actually change them during it. And obviously I'm going to try and hide that as much as possible, but I kind of took that as more a natural state that I didn't have an issue with.
Oh yeah,
It's interesting to hear that other people would find that a little bit more frustrating.
I guess just to clarify, it's what I mean. I also as a new DM and even as a player, I also have to adjust my combat in the middle of the session and all that stuff. I'm totally support fudging die rolls if you need to, or shaping things so that they work out narratively. I mostly in this case mean that when it's clear, or when the DM lets on that they're doing that it bothers me.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think what this kind of transitions to is it's very much we were talking about PC versus GM expectations, and sometimes you want to be very clear about portraying that, but there are some things as a DM you don't want to give away necessarily. And I would love to actually, because the worst point when character death can definitely be a sore subject is when these expectations don't mesh up from a GM and player. And so I definitely want to start hearing people's times when either a character of theirs has died, or a character of a friend has died, or they even had to kill a character themselves. Does anyone have a story or something like that where, I don't know, how did you handle it and any problems that came up?
Has any of our characters died before?
Wait, are all of your characters have never died? Anyone here?
No,
I've gotten close,
I've
but
died so far.
I've also gotten close.
Damn.
I don't think I've even seen a character die, another player character die in a campaign, not just my own.
Have any of you
Well,
killed a character?
we have seen like backstory characters die in our campaign.
Yes. I definitely want to touch on that as well. NPC deaths.
Yeah.
Master Pigo.
Oh wait, I had to think about that.
Really?
You're supposed to be grieving. It's
But you're
your
supposed to be grieving,
backstory.
gamer.
Wait.
This is your arc.
All right. So no one has died themselves. Has anyone's killed a player as a DM?
Oh, I haven't been.
Damn.
I guess
Have
the
you?
closest
Yeah.
is. Oh damn.
Jesus. Oh, yeah, Karui.
To be fair, I've heard a
killed-
lot of things from Ash's other sessions from friends that we have where they die a lot.
Not a lot.
Very different
Are you
style.
adding your evil side to ours?
Neutral evil DM.
I will say that I did do a count recently, and I've killed 8 characters over my DM career.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Oh.
Jesus.
that's a lot.
I
And
feel like in the game I'm playing right now, like I could see a few of the characters not caring if their character died. Like I don't think I'd kill off the new players
in Deep
who don't
Currents.
really know what they're doing yet. Or
Mhm.
in Deep Currents. Like I feel like a few, like I don't know, Ash probably I'd keep alive, but a lot of the characters don't have like really deep backstories and could like easily be replaced by another similar character, and I'm not sure the players would mind.
Yeah, I think that's another big factor, right? How new is the player, and how much weight do they put on death based on their experience? Because
I think for new players, I
Mhm.
wouldn't want to do it, or for like really deeply created characters, like I wouldn't do it until they've like finished some sort of arc. But for experienced
yeah.
players who have more of a like, oh, I'm just doing this like more of a stat focused or more combat focused approach to D&D, I don't think it's a big deal.
so you'd kill Kevin's character.
Yeah, pretty much. I
Damn.
don't think he'd mind.
Hope they're not listening.
I don't plan
Also,
on
can we
killing
give a
him
moment of
unless he's
silence?
okay with it.
Moment of silence.
Can we give a moment of silence for all the characters Ash killed?
Okay.
Moment of silence.
I will admit, I didn't realize it was that many, but this is since I was a fresh DM till now, and I think the most recent death was one that actually might come back alive, and so I haven't had any like hard deaths in a while.
No.
Probably the deaths that I felt were the worst were just the lower level ones where I was like, damn, these monsters hit way too hard. Because I've definitely run Wizard of the Coast modules, and some of those things are like, damn, this is like just combat after combat of just trying to kill the players.
I think the closest I also haven't killed any players, but the closest I have come was Saph's character in my campaign, Ire. But I think in that case, and probably in other cases where like, if I were to accidentally almost kill a lower level character, there were like clear options that I would provide for them to like have a resurrection performed. And so I think in that case, I guess it depends on the campaign setting though. Like that, there was it was set in a city, and there were options where Ire could have gotten resurrected pretty easily. So I think that it definitely depends on the setting, because if they were out in a dungeon or something, I'm not sure how I would have handled that.
Iris passes away.
Yeah, just that's the end for you. Roll a new character. She's got
Damn
like
it.
10 siblings. It's fun.
Wow. That is cold.
It is hard though when, like, there's one thing for things to die based on, you make an encounter where like, yeah, there's a possibility someone can die, but then when it happens from a natural one or from just like, an encounter someone else made not being balanced, you're just like, fuck, is this happening?
Yeah.
I guess that
It's
goes
also
back to like
questioning if-
agency, like you're saying.
Yes.
I'm also just curious, like, how easy do you make it as a DM? Like, at least in all the campaigns I've played, like, even if you drop to 0, someone's got a health potion, or someone has a healing spell, or, like, a med kit, like, as long as someone gives up their turn, it's pretty much guaranteed that you're not going to actually have to roll 3 death saves, like, before you get brought back to 1 HP somehow. So I feel like there's a lot of ways as a DM to make it, like, a lot more control on the players. Like, it's really easy to stop it from actually going that far, but you're still maintaining the tension because they're dropping to 0 quite often. which kind of brings it up to a little bit
Yeah.
different.
I think, that danger of just going unconscious should be big, right? It shouldn't be to the point of, like, if you die, like, the fear shouldn't be in just the death. It should be in going unconscious leading to death, right? So you don't actually have to kill a character to get that tension.
I feel like in like K&D, like most of our big fights have had people dropping to 0, and then somebody just drops everything and runs over to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Every time.
No, Ken was
Koya
one too.
dropped-
But
Oh.
Ken did fall in the first big fight.
Ken was the
Yeah.
first one.
But if we
Well,
think
I
about
just
it,
want to say
Mhm.
that if Cordelia dies, I'll probably drop D&D.
What?
Another question I'm
Sad.
curious about. Yeah.
Your very first campaign character.
Sure hope she doesn't die.
I hope
Oh,
so too.
yeah, I love her.
We all love her.
I think as somebody who plays who's played like not just 5e but also since I run a modern setting campaign, the mechanics are slightly different than what 5e gives me, which is annoying. But I feel like it also in that modern setting there's also there's a lot more options as to how players like can like revive and like be and also like can go unconscious, because there's also like in modern there's also the concept of critical injuries, which is very different from what like 5e gives, and like couple that with like player character death. I find it like, especially in that modern setting, there's a lot more risk to it than just playing 5e and be like, oh shit, you dropped to 0 hit points, roll death saves. So like I personally with and everyone, most of JV is here. There is the risk of death, but because there is also a risk of critical injury, it's there, but I don't think I want to try and make it as prominent as it is usually in like as I like imagine it in 5e is.
For context, like debilitating injuries are like, injuries that stay with your character for a long time based on, physical, like either going down combat or something happening, right?
Yeah, like you can lose an eye, lose an arm. I think you can also lose. I think you can also lose a liver, but I might have to check.
Liver.
Very specific.
A liver. That's very
Entire liver.
specific.
Wondering.
Yeah, you can suffer internal injuries, broken ribs, horrible scar, festering wound, minor scar, or legitimately just lose an eye, an arm, or a hand, or foot, or a leg, or be limp.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about like other systems' way of handling death, near-death things, as well as our own homebrew things we might work with. I did want to bring up one more thing. Like, I may have killed a couple characters, but I'm now recalling I have had at least 2-3 characters die, and some of them were okay deaths, some of them did not feel great, and I wanted to bring this up in talking about player agency for a bit. Because player agency, like I mentioned, was like important to like feel the fulfillment of like, hey, your character at least had worth and you made the decisions that led to its death, in terms of you have some control over it. It's not just happens to you.
Yeah.
I mentioned this story before. I like to share it just because this always occurs to me in terms of character death. When I felt like this situation of like no agency at all. I had a character that was in a homebrew sort of system by a friend, and the character died via another character in the party trying to teleport him up onto a ledge. Very simple, out of combat, nothing risky, or like not like a life-threatening scenario. And the way it worked was the teleportation was space magic, where you roll a dice and just see like how well you accomplish it, right? There's no real mechanic behind it. Unfortunately, they rolled a 1, and that instantly closed the teleportation portal around my character's temple and instantly killed him.
Oh.
And it's funny thinking about it now, but I'm like, damn, that's actually an example where I was fine 1 minute, and then I could have literally just like stepped away from the mic for literally a few seconds, and my character was just dead.
Oh my goodness.
That
That's
does seem
devastating.
frustrating
Yeah, that's
and
rough.
extreme.
Yeah, because it was not only based on someone else's role, right? It was only based on a single role.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what at least D&D 5e does in terms of, it tries to build you up towards that, both in your hit points, you know, you treat track of as it lowers down, you're closer to death, as well as death saving throws, right? There's multiple, like, you know, barriers towards death. And that's what you want to, I kind of, like, always like to stress. Like, you want to make sure the players know it's coming and leading up to it.
What was the DM's
Yeah.
reaction to that character dying? Was he totally cool about it?
I think he was also a pretty new DM at that point, and just it was also like homebrew system. And believe me, like I've tried before trying out D&D, doing my own homebrew system, and it's so hard if you don't have like a point of reference. And so he just like shit, yeah, and so started describing it, and I think in the middle of describing, he was like, wait, this character's dead if this happens, and then kept going. We talked about it later, and he was like, yeah, I think I pretty much fucked up in the moment there, and was like, okay, retconning stuff to bring my character back alive. But, you know, stuff like that happened just from the flow of things.
Kind of, yeah, basically learning as a new DM.
Yeah.
Very unfortunate.
And so
I would be mostly frustrated because that basically is punishing you for trying to do something kind of like silly and like testing the system. And it's basically telling you like, oh, don't ever try anything that could possibly backfire horrendously. And I feel like that kind of closes your options for like the future of the campaign.
Yeah.
yes, that's one of the
There
things.
definitely could have been other options that he could have gone with, besides just snapping the portal shut and insta killing your character.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of options, and it was just probably inexperience as well as just like, you know, in the moment you have that sort of like, yeah, what happened, and just have to make something up.
You have to punish the one somehow. I get it.
But yeah, like in terms of you don't want risky behavior as a DM, you want there to be a punishment, but you don't want to be overly punishing, because then players are less likely to take initiative and take risks. But yeah, that's an example of, at least since no one else has died yet, one of my characters dying that felt not great.
Just out of curiosity, and we can come back to this also. But do you guys have like different? And I guess like Color, you mentioned this. Like if Cordelia died, you would probably be very unhappy. But do you ever have like some characters who you really want to live, and some characters who you'd be kind of okay with? Like, I know I've played like my second and third characters when I got more into D&D. Sapph, I was in the first campaign I did with Sapph. My character kept going unconscious over and over again, and eventually I was like, you know, if she dies, that's okay. Like, I can roll a new character. But thinking about like my very first character dying, I think I would be pretty upset if she didn't get some sort of like narrative resolution, because she never really got to get very far into her arc. And so I think it's definitely, I'm curious like if people are always attached to their characters, or if you have like it's different depending on the character.
I do think for your character, it sounds kind of like you got desensitized just because you came close to death so many times.
Yeah, it's definitely part of that, because I was like, okay, this might actually happen. But also, I think I wasn't super attached to her yet, and so I felt like I wasn't like really attached to playing out her arc. I would be happy to like roll and try out a different character.
I feel like
First
that kind of
characters-
like, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that I feel like for me, like I mentioned, with Cordelia, she's been basically my main character for the past like, how long has it been since we started Kin and Dread?
About,
Sort of
half a
like
year.
not exactly, about a little over half a year.
7?
A little
Yeah.
over half a year, yeah.
And there's been like a bunch of sessions where I just kind of like in the beginning, sure, yeah, I didn't have such an attachment to her, towards her, that yeah, I had like a backstory, and like I thought about like people that were in her life before she started adventuring and stuff. But yeah, you don't have an attachment until you actually play with the character, right? Unless you have like this amazingly designed character from like the start. I feel like it takes a little. It kind of much like your character with the party. You also have to adventure with your character, right?
Yeah,
And
sure, yeah.
for me, maybe if in the beginning Cordelia died, it wouldn't have affected me as much as now that I have like, oh my god, I have so many like things planned for her, for like people that were in her life. I have like mysteries that I need to solve before she even thinks about dying, right?
Yeah.
It's like it will be really heartbreaking for me to accept that. And I feel like it may sound silly. I mean, not to you guys because you understand, but it really is like a mourning process when you lose such a big part of your character. Like I celebrated her so much when she had like an amazingly timed nat 20 that ended up killing
It was
one of
beautiful.
the most.
That was
So
amazing.
cool.
It was like almost magical, and it sent me to like this state of happiness that at the time when I was like in the middle, we were in the middle of the pandemic, I didn't feel for a while. You know, there's like a real attachment and real feelings um entangled with these characters, and it's like it's like an actual death sometimes. And I mean, I'm not trying to compare it to an actual person dying, but it is a part of yourself that you're giving it up, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's
Yeah,
weird at
absolutely.
all. Whenever you make a character, right, you don't realize you're building a mold to put yourself into, and as you play them, you put more and more of yourself into it. It's like
I also agree with the storyline aspect as well, especially with K&D. It's a very like narrative drawn like story. And a lot of our characters have backstories that will be coming to light more like in the future. And it's like if my character died, like I have so many like I had reveals I wanted to do. I wanted him to change like after certain events that would eventually happen, and I wanted him to like grow, and I've like planned half the steps, but not all of them. If he were to die now, I would probably just quit the campaign for a short period. Like, I don't think I could continue in that world with all of those stories that I was so looking forward to that I had like planned out in my mind just never coming to fruition. I honestly would have way too much trouble handling that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think
Like-
that's a lot of it. Like a lot of my other characters were kind of like my first character I think is really common that people don't want to die with their first like foray into D&D. And at the time I was like, no, this character is great. She's got to survive and be awesome. And now looking back, I don't think I would care if she died if I went back to that campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And like the one shots and stuff were similar. Like, oh, you know, I didn't have anything I was really planning for. So I think now the only characters I don't want to die are the ones I have events I want to happen in story that haven't happened yet. Those would be the most painful.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel as well. Like before I played D&D, I used to be like, what's the big deal if like a character dies, just like create the same character again. Who's gonna stop you?
Duplicate.
Just reskin them.
Yeah. And in fact,
twin
Alex
sister.
actually did that. My boyfriend, he played this fighter named Philip, and then I think he died, and then he just made it the same guy. But then the DM was like, you at least have to change his name, so he changed it to like Philip. So he just spelled it like slightly differently or something like that. I don't know.
Oh, that's the story behind Philip and Philip.
Oh.
I think. Or maybe it's some other guy. I don't know.
Was it a
Like
different
he's
game?
not.
Because then he brought it back for two other games as well. Then, right?
That might be the case then. So maybe he didn't die. He just like brought him back in a different world.
He
I don't-
played
he's
it
not-
both in the one shot I ran as well as right now in Engine's campaign.
Yeah, like he's not as big on like RP or backstory. But like now that I've made, I don't know, like 8 characters, it's like the first character I made, I put in thought into the backstory, yeah, but like if they die, it would have been like not as big of a deal because I didn't have things planned for them. They had a story and then that was it. Like there was nothing in their character that I needed closure for. But then now for Key, if he died, I think I'd be like absolutely devastated.
No. I'm killed.
Not
I think
just 'cause he's a
everyone would
little
be
baby
devastated, not gonna lie.
He cannot
Not
die.
even
I
like
will-
that'd be sad.
Yeah, like
But also
he,
because, like-
he is the one person who just can't die in Candy.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm pretty sure in Candy, if anyone died, we would all die as well trying to save them.
yeah. Just
Yeah.
All or nothing at this point.
devastated.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. But like if my character died, I'd be really devastated because like I made him as a character with flaws, and I want those to be like something that he grows on. And if I don't get that
Yeah.
chance at all, it's like, oh shit, I'm gonna feel real bad about it.
I love Key so much.
But like that
I'm-
being said, oh, just one more
No,
thing.
go ahead.
That being said, when I play him, I don't play him with
Yeah,
the
you're not
idea that I need to
careful.
be. Yeah, I don't play
You
carefully
are.
and I don't play safely because like it's a lot of fucking fun to do something reckless and crazy because sometimes it works out. But two, I also don't want to play my character like fearing the fact that they might die doing something.
I agree with that. You don't want to play a character with like chains on you about like, oh, I shouldn't do this because either it's risky, something bad could happen necessarily, and or like it just feels bad when you're like self-restraining yourself too much.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, your
Yeah.
character is designed to be fearful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but like that's like a different case.
I think it's like that's one of the things I was talking about with the risk, right? Like risky behavior should have punishment, but shouldn't be overly punishing just because you want people to take the initiative with the story, take risks that will change the course of everything you and they might have planned, and just bring more life to everything just because, that's what you're doing. You're literally making a decision that normally, video game-wise, you might not do, but you do because it's a life. It's, emotions or like, what you think would happen based on the kind of character you're playing.
Yeah. I feel like there's also an aspect of DM trust in here too. Like if the DM is treating your characters in a way that like you can respect, like, oh, they're not just going to callously kill them off like from a bad roll. You're gonna do more of these things.
Mhm.
Or like if someone is kind of more on that side, then I'm just not gonna make a character that I'm very invested in for that campaign.
Damn.
That's a good
That's
point.
true.
Y'all think I'm callous? Yeah, I've killed 8 characters.
Whoa. how
Yeah, you would
scary.
never kill us, right?
Giant monkey about to murder us all.
If somebody dies in the next Candy session, bad things are gonna hapen.
Yeah, I know now.
Oh, honey, all or nothing.
No
We're
one
going in
knows.
on this.
Profit.
Yeah.
I'll probably reiterate
Speaking of,
this.
Please don't touch Noelle.
No.
Noelle is my baby. Or Cordelia's baby, boy.
I will reiterate this one probably later, but I definitely believe in giving all characters a just death in terms of they see it coming, and it has value. They themselves decide on it, and it leaves something of worth behind. But of course, that being the case, I can only do so much, and it's up to you guys to also, do your best to keep yourselves and each other alive.
Ah, yes, I will choose to fall off a 1,000-foot cliff and turn into a goldfish instead of turning into a
Yeah.
bird.
Stuff like that. The DM doesn't have control.
I guess kind of tying into that, I'm curious, like, I think it was in one of the, like, GM tips videos that Matt Mercer did, where he was talking about, like, letting, when there is a death, like, letting the players kind of roleplay what happens, and I'm, like, wonder how much you guys feel like players should have agency to, like, kind of outside of the dice rolls and outside of normal mechanics, like, let players like play out those events, like if there's last words or something that happens, like how much agency do you feel like players should have to just kind of maybe go outside what normally would be allowed if something like that happens.
I think players should be given all the agency if they're gonna die. I mean, it's
Yeah.
literally you're not only talking about a character's death, but also like it's
Like you said
unless
before,
it's
part of yourself.
like a very emotional moment where the player cannot roleplay because of his emotions taking over. I feel like at least give players a chance of like start the closure, I guess, or end the story as as best as they can.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I definitely think whether it's they have a chance in the moment or a chance eventually, right? You should definitely give the party space to roleplay and get their feelings sorted on such a, like, you know, it's such a big moment in the story if a character dies, because it sets not only precedent for, you know, stuff like this can happen, but like it's a usually new experience in the eyes of that character, of that player. One of my players in PNPD, like, they're new-ish to D&D, but by the time we've been playing, right, they've been playing a while, but they'd never experienced a character death before. And so when one of the other characters died, they really had just like, holy shit, how does this affect my character? And then based off that, they wrote me, like, you know, a whole thing about like what it was going through their character's eyes to be next to death. It changes not just, you know, you emotionally out of the game, but your character, and when you really link to their emotions, you're like, holy shit, this is, you know, it does stuff to you.
I think DMs letting like dice rolls sit back for a moment to allow important narrative like moments to shine is really important. It's like, especially for something as impactful as a character death, like you said, because like you don't want to have like something like grandiose planned for your character's death, but then you rolled a nat 1. So instead of like, I don't know, dying by saving someone's life, they trip and hit their head or something dumb.
Yeah.
Like if my character's gonna die, it better be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I do agree. I think, like, as the more and more I've DM'd, I've actually gone to like less is more, as in less die rolls as well as less like DCs, like lower DCs, just because you want to enable the story that the players are making. And like, you know, sometimes, hey, I don't want this to fail, don't ask for a die roll, or there's very low chance of this failing, like set the DC super low. Like if there's no chance of failure, there's no reason to have a die roll. If it doesn't fit for there to be failure in this scenario, don't make a die roll.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like, it seems, I'm sure I've done this, like, starting out DMing, and feels a lot of times like, oh, we have to, you know, make the players roll dice, because otherwise how they interact thing. But yeah, like, especially like you said, when there's no chance of failure, or when you really don't want something to happen, like, don't leave it up to the dice, or like fudging, ending up like having to backtrack and fudge what happened because you made an unnecessary die roll or something.
Yeah, I think especially when I was first starting out DMing, like the dice was more of a crutch for me than like a mechanic of the game, because I'm just like, I can't improvise this fast, let them roll a die, and that gives me more time to think, and then okay, the die was like in the middle, I can do something, you know, neutral versus something good or something bad and describe that. But as you get used to it, and as you DM, or as you just play D&D in general, you get used to like, yeah, this is a fitting thing to happen based on what they want to do. But yeah, since none of us, like, you guys haven't had any monumental deaths yet, even though you have definitely thought a lot about your own characters dying, what that might mean to you. Let's talk about NPC deaths a little, because I think we've all experienced at least a bit of that. I want to ask, Nora, do you have any stories about NPC deaths? Because I know at least one that everyone else has.
I don't actually think I do. I'm trying to think of if there are any NPC deaths in my first campaign that I was in. Um, there were definitely like times when NPCs almost died and we had to like save them, and I really liked it in the sense that I feel like we got to engage with the game and the world a lot closer. But I don't think we had any major deaths. But also that campaign did get cut short. I think there were some chances that it could have happened.
Have you ever thought killing an NPC yourself when DMing or coming up with the narrative of a adventure?
I haven't thought about it too much actually, which I've thought a lot about player death, but not as much about NPC death. And I think part of it is just that I haven't played or I haven't DM'd enough or like long enough campaigns to have any NPCs that like the players got really attached to. But I am interested to hear like how other people, like what stories you guys have, because it's not something I've thought about as much.
I guess I could share about Master Pigu's Key's backstory.
Yeah.
I guess for my experience, it's like the scene where Master Pigu was killed. It was kind of like it was very shocking, obviously, but like at the same time, I did feel like it was a little sterile for me since we had so little screen time with him. Right? Because like we did have like the scene where he interacted with Key in the flashback, which I think did help in terms of like me experiencing his death in the game. But besides that, the only times I've thought about him was when I was writing Key's backstory. So like I felt like my reaction to him getting murdered was more like acting than like something I was feeling, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. What about anyone else? I want to share my opinions as well as Master P as the one who killed him, but I wanted to hear about the other members of the party.
I think that's the only real NPC death that I've actually had in any campaigns. If there were others, they weren't really effective. But I feel like that one was obviously centered around Key and his backstory. But as we had like previously made our backstories like kind of mesh a little bit, like Ken technically would have known these people. I felt like the actual individual was not that important, but as a part of the bigger whole, if like the entire temple had burned down and like all the monks were dead, I thought it just gave more of like a visceral, singular like death that we could kind of link to like the whole issue. So it was just more like you could see something more personal that kind of embodied the bigger scale. And in that way, I kind of did feel like less terrible about Master Pigu dying and more about like Key's past dying in flames like in front of our eyes was very visceral to me, I think. And so that kind of hit me pretty hard.
There's a good quote that I remember that kind of relates to that. It states, "A single death is a tragedy. 1,000,000 deaths are a statistic." And so, if hundreds of monks died, right,
it's not a big
sad,
deal, actually.
You know, it's a number.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but like, you know,
Breaking news at 9.
it's like you don't have
though.
a personal connection to it, like you were saying, versus Master Pigu, even if it's just in that name, in that visual, it's a bit more of a, like you said, visceral connection.
Yeah, it kind of drives it home in a way that like, oh, we saw it all burning from afar and we never went close, like, just wouldn't do.
Makes me wonder though, how to make like an NPC like that feel like an actual, you know, especially if it's connected to your character's backstory. How do you make it feel more painful or make you feel something? As because technically speaking, we're acting things out, right? We're performing, right? So it doesn't truly need to be painful for us necessarily, right? But when we're talking about like characters that are so attached to us, in a way, it, as we said before, like we will feel very bad if like our characters die. But this is like, for example, with Key, that was like basically his father figure, right? Dying in front of his eyes, even though they haven't seen each other for a while. So I just wonder how can you make that possible? Like make it more of a realistic moment when you don't really spend too much time, like I guess role playing with them, right?
Yeah, I guess it's definitely a bit of a, like, you know, hard bridge the gap, because it's like you both have the emotional side of things where you yourself can be invested, and that's why you have more feeling in the scene, versus acting wise, right? Like, are you able to turn that switch just to almost portray yourself as like heartbroken? For Master Pigu's case, right? Like, here's the thing. If there is an NPC that a player is able to make a connection with and it's around for a while, right? That NPC kind of gets emotional value equal to a player character, in that you guys will be very sad to see it die. Like, maybe not on the level of your own PC, but it's like keeps growing and getting up there.
Fucking end.
Do anything
Yeah,
to
that's
end.
what I was thinking.
Yeah, but like Ind's only been with you one
Their parties,
session.
baby.
Imagine
Session.
like Ind was with you since the very beginning, or like some other NPC, or like we kept Barth around the whole time for some reason, or Bart's daughter, or someone like you've known since the beginning, just like a player character. Then it becomes visceral if they die.
Yeah. At that point, it's at the same level as killing a character in some ways.
You have some sort of like emotional connection. And I think there's also a sense of complexity in the NPCs that come with it. Like when I design my NPCs, I make sure that like some of them are just static, because you know you can't really put effort into making a million different characters with a million different stories that you can memorize, because that's difficult. But like in certain cases, like in the case of say Effie, Ind, or in JV's case, Hank,
My
they're,
boy.
like
Oh my god.
for context, Hank is someone that the party in my campaign found in one of the cells in the prison in which they're trapped in. Color's character released him, and there's been a sort of weird thing going on. Thing. But in either case, like Hank, like there is still some sort of, I feel like I try to make it so there's at least some sort of complexity to him. It's not just, oh, he's just a raving farm man in his like 40s who's just like this character. Like he has interests. He has
Yeah, he has
I
interest.
did not phrase that well.
Does have interest.
I did not phrase that well.
Alright.
I did not phrase that well.
Care to elaborate?
No. Well, he's not just some static flat man. He has what he dislikes. He has what he has what he likes. He has what he dislikes. And there's a sense of like a series of emotions that can be able to flow through him that kind of is able to be interacted with the characters.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's like, not every NPC has to be like that, but if there is an NPC that has that sort of complexity, then I feel like that NPC death, should they die, be much more real and have much more emotional value to the players than just the static character, even if they've just been there for a while, then they just like, you know, get killed off.
As from a GM's perspective as well, I'll say one of the major things is if you're looking at NPC death, right, or like whether or not they can die or will die, right, are you able to use them as a plot device? Unfortunately, if black and white down to it, right? Like Master Pigu, plot device because he has narrative value in that meaning, right? Versus someone like Kind, right? That you guys have latched onto, has gone further from the plot device like region and more towards the, okay, if this guy dies, it's because of your guys' actions, right? Basically what you did and how you presented with him, just like a player character, right? There has to be player agency for a set of NPCs based on how you guys interact with them, whether or not they can die, versus other characters that can die as a plot device.
Yeah.
You're saying
I
you're not
agree.
gonna intentionally kill off Kind.
I'd say
So
he's been
Kind dies,
moving.
it's your fault.
Please don't kill our baby.
If N dies, I'm going to quit the campaign.
You just gotta
Well,
protect
not
them.
Koya dies.
We're gonna
Like,
riot.
I don't care. Like, Koya dies, okay, sure. In dies, yeah, no, that's the deal breaker.
God
Sorry.
damn.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry for interrupting.
I feel like it sadly comes down to a matter of chemistry as well. Like, you can write the longest character backstory that you can never imagine, but if an NPC doesn't have chemistry with the campaign, it's sadly not gonna be sad if they die, right?
Yep.
Like, Kin barely nod its head, and this was cute, right?
Yeah, to make sure
So it was
Nora
easy
and
to fall in
Meg
love with them.
is also here now, so you guys have some context. Kind is literally just a golem that can't talk, that they've are infatuated with
I didn't know
because
he can
of half a
talk.
session.
He does gesture
seen-
though. He's soul
Yeah, he
searching
does.
right now.
Can communicate.
Yeah, he can do a lot of things. Don't talk about In like that.
He
He's
nods
very
and points.
capable. He's very capable In.
He is very capable, but yeah, like he is a golem that is, trying to find out who he is.
He has a lot of sense.
Like a
The
river
official adopted
environment,
NPC.
and he's weak to water, and we are doing everything we can to help him over the water.
Yeah.
Kind of Hello?
Yep.
Hello.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, hello. I just wanted to add, he kind of reminds me of kind of like a pet rock in the sense, like very much a pet
Yes.
rock, but with
Okay.
magical powers, right? Like it can move around, but it's the value of a pet rock, a very loved pet rock.
That's
He
a
is
very
very
good
loved.
description of Kind.
Yeah, it
And-
is.
Yeah.
It is. They even made memes about him. Like, that's how far. Like, how
The
far.
mascot.
We've already, yeah. If we made memes about it, it's over.
It is over.
Half a session, and he
We
cannot be
have
allowed
a
to die.
witness.
Yeah, what do you guys think about that? Not necessarily Kind in particular, but because I mean that's kind of a common trope, and I know that just happened to us in my newest D&D campaign. We just accidentally, one of our characters adopted a goblin. Like the killing of, even if it's accidental, of the adopted party member NPC. Because I feel like that'd be difficult to handle as a DM
Oh,
if that happened.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
heartbreaking.
oh,
Yeah.
I haven't experienced that even went worse than that. The fucking
Oh
group
my
adopted a goblin they called Groot, and they went so far as to finally think of a party name, Groot's Crew. But
Oh no.
no.
thankfully they didn't really love the goblin as much as he was the comic relief that they kept running around.
Yeah.
One of the characters, who is a lizard folk barbarian, kind of tribal and whatnot, while the other party was busy, took Groot away, behind the woods before alone, and literally sacrificed him to his tribal
Oh my
entity.
god.
Oh.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Fucked up. I will kill that character. I don't
Like the
care.
character kicked out of the party.
I am just glad that we have, as far as I know, nobody in our campaign will do something like that.
That would be civil war.
Say, he
Yeah.
has not even talked to Kind yet, and so
Yeah,
as
let's
far
not
as you
give any
know, he
ideas.
does not care about the golem.
Listen, Bonnie, I will kill your donkey in another campaign if you touch him.
Oh wow, we're taking it that far.
I said it. I was a donkey
Jumping
support.
campaigns now.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
This is like
Transcending campaign
This is a
timelines.
trans-universal situation.
That makes
here.
sense. Cordelia
the
writes a
same.
letter to like her long lost cousin and sends it off and like, just so you know, this happened. I heard someone on your ship is related. Get at them.
Yeah. Kill their pet.
It's getting
Kill their pet
wild.
too.
Well, I think that's actually a perfect, because we talked about the narrative value of death, right? Both NPC plot devices as well as your own emotional sort of narrative. You want your character to like have narrative growth and whatnot. But then there's also the social impact of death on the table, as you know, we are friends around the table, and like, you know, people getting pissed if their character dies with either the GM or like, you know, whatever scenario that happened, or, you know, if someone kills the pet character, right? How do you feel about that? There's, yeah.
I'll have beef with them.
Huh. I think so long as you keep it clear that death is on the table, and like your choices may or may not lead to death. So long as you keep that on the table, like as a GM, I try to keep that on the table. I don't know if I've done a very good job of it, but like as a GM and a player, I do expect if death is on the table, then like I'd be okay with player death. Like if Koya dies, like it'd be disappointing, yeah, but like so be it. Like there's so much. I don't think I wouldn't be pissed at you, Ash. But when it's in the case of like something that like a different, like an adopted party member, or like if due to another player's action, like something like yeets away, it's gonna be I feel like it's gonna be a bit more complicated, I guess. Mostly because like I as a person, like I like to be given choices, of which if I make it, then you know shit happens. But in like the adopted party member slash like another player like getting that chance to just yeet something away choice, there's like I feel like at that point like my voice wasn't like put in as input for the account, so I feel like there would be some sort of tension. Tension is a strong word.
No, I
It is tension.
get
No,
what
I
you're
agree.
saying, yeah.
Tension works.
Yeah, tension. But I don't know. I'm also the person who's like, shit happens, like people die. There's impact happens.
But if they're purposefully trying to mess the
With that,
party
that's a
up,
different story. Like at that
I
point,
know.
it's just
Yeah.
people being shitty.
Yeah,
But like,
yeah,
if it's just like
exactly.
a character being in character, if it's a person being in character, and using that action, yeah, I'd be pissed, because you know it's like I like obviously like not everybody agreed to it, and it just kind of happened, but at the same time, it's like, well, it's still that person acting in character. So like, what do you do? Like it still drives the story forward. Like that adopted party member slash something still left an impact on us.
Yeah.
True, but I do think it comes down to the same two principles again. Because at the end of the day, we're a bunch of friends playing a game, right? We're not doing it just for, like, you know, to create a certain kind of story. We're doing it so we all have fun together. And so it comes down to, once more, player agency, right? Like, if I'm invested in this death, was I able to have some form of, like, participation in preventing it, or, like, you know, leading to it happening, even if it wasn't, like, you know, necessarily what I wanted. In addition to like expectations being shared across the board, both by the GM and the players, as well as maybe the players and the players. Like if the player at least demonstrates, hey, my character doesn't exactly feel the same way about this character, let's just broach the topic. How would you feel if I sacrificed it to my deity, right? And
Yeah.
I think the right answer is if the other player isn't comfortable with it, you're like, okay, that's just one thing I probably shouldn't do then.
Mm.
Yeah, I would definitely lean on that. I would have hard feelings if someone kind of, it felt like they went behind my back to do something to like kill an NPC that like they knew would upset me.
Yeah.
Like
Mm.
why? Like I would kind of take it as like, because like you said, I'm here to have fun and play with my friends, and like I don't feel like there's like a D&D law that like must be upheld where like you're allowed to do crappy things if your player is crappy. Like you still have to treat your friends nicely in real life, and I kind of feel like it's kind of hitting those boundaries. Like if I said I didn't like it when you said certain things to me and then you went out of your way to say those things to me, I would kind of take it personally, and I feel like this is more to me similar to that. Like, you know I would be upset and you did it anyway. Do you enjoy me being upset? And like I generally don't hang out with people who make me feel that way. So if someone did that a lot in D&D, I would assume it's their general personality. Like, oh, they just don't care if they make me upset. And I
That
try
is
not to like
kinda-
be extreme, but I would start thinking along those lines.
That is kind of similar to, like, before we started the campaign, we kind of had like a list of things that we don't want to touch particularly, right? Because
Yeah.
it's kind of like, I feel like it relates to that in a way that I feel like many things that regard consent that you wouldn't
Yeah.
do in real life, you wouldn't repeat them in
It's
D&D, even
like-
though obviously you're
yeah.
talking about people dying and wars.
Yeah, you
and-
wouldn't kill in real life. But if you
Yeah,
want to
you
bring it
wouldn't-
up, I think it
Yeah.
would be like Ash said, like, I want to do this, I know you're against it, I'll let your character, like, have a chance to react instead of doing it behind your back. That I wouldn't have an issue with. But yeah, I need that agency, otherwise I would take it as a bit of a personal betrayal if they denied me that.
I agree.
You want to have like expectations clear, right, between a
Yeah.
player and a player, and even if their characters don't know, right? Because at the first and foremost, you are players at the same tables. Oftentimes, you can assume you're friends, right? And so you want to be considerate to your friends to at least, show them you're working together on the narrative and not just trying to fulfill your own narrative.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think for me, at least, that's. Oh, sorry. Go for it.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I feel like this is kind of summing up what you guys have been saying, but like, I feel like it's so important to stress that it's okay to just like have a conversation at the table, like pause the game, like do whatever. Like if somebody needs to, especially if something like a death happens, if somebody needs to like walk away for a while and think about it, like in my case, I've been lucky enough that I've like play with really cool people, and I've never had like a situation where I felt uncomfortable or like we had different agendas or something, and so I've never had to like deal with a hard conversation like that in D&D. But I know there's like different play styles, and so yeah, like you guys have all been saying, like player communication and DM communication is so important, and I feel like sometimes it can be easy to like lose track, like get caught up in, I guess, being like role playing or like letting the game happen as it happens. But I think it's totally okay to just like pause and talk about it.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
That's very true, yeah.
I think those are the two things like I hold in very high value, not just in terms of D&D, but in real world stuff too, right? Communication, the willingness to be able to like talk about something rather than just acting on it, as well as consideration, right? Being like, okay, if I did this, how would other people feel about it? If it could be negative, let me at least touch base with them first.
Totally, yeah.
I think sometimes just as a social beings, we have to make sacrifices of like, I think this would have been super great, but everyone else kind of vetoed it, and you have to just kind of let it go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, right, your priority is a better experience for everyone aboard.
Yeah.
It's to play a fun game
Yeah.
and enjoy ourselves.
Keep it fun.
Right. We have come to this question now that I definitely want to hear everyone's input. We've danced around it a bit, but to die or not to die, what do you think? How much
Die.
Just out of the gate.
Best.
DMing, playing,
Not even hesitation.
Yeah.
Would you run a game with character death on the line, and how much like value would you put on like how from meat grindery to like never happening? Where are you?
So it's like, which Minecraft mode are you on? Hard mode, hardcore, like pacifist,
God.
normal.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, as someone who did have one near-death experience because of a lack of preparation for my character, honestly, I wouldn't be too surprised if, a character just died off. I mean, it is part of the game, right? Dying is just as simple as living, right? I wouldn't mind too much as long as it's a purposeful death, Like,
Mhm.
you can't just, be walking around in D&D and just have someone shoot a flaming arrow straight between the eyes, right? And just die off. That'd be kind of unfortunate.
That sounds like
Like-
you have a specific Minecraft memory.
No.
Minecraft depths are falling.
Don't
Yeah,
kill my
mine-
Minecraft dog.
Falls into lava. Wait, hold on. You fell Reyna fell unconscious. She was like,
2 points of
incapacitated.
HP left. 2
oh
points!
shit. Oops.
Do you
Okay,
not
well-
remember, Miss DM?
Reyna was
I
pretty
guess
close to dying.
I have an experience of almost killing off a parallayer. It's been a while.
She doesn't even remember.
Right. Well, Meg, if you had to do 1 to 5, where 1 is complete peaceful, 5 is meat grindery, where would you, either as a DM or as a player, would want for a game of D&D?
I want to keep it even around 3. Like, I don't want it to be too bloody to the fact that it would, like, as someone who's played enough D&D, it's kind of sad when your character dies, right? Like,
Mhm.
I want it to be, as if I were to DM, I want it to be where it's a natural thing that happens if it happens.
Mhm.
If you try to avoid it, then that's okay. I'm not gonna force characters to die for the sake of dying, because it wouldn't really make it fun, because you can't really do much,
Mhm.
right, when you're dead.
Nice.
But- That's my take on it.
All right.
I think over hearing everyone's opinions, I'm starting to think that right now I'm pretty solid on the one side. Like, I have my characters, I want their backstories to be cool, I want them to, like, grow and change, and losing that makes me sad. But I actually think as I play more, I actually will probably change. Like, right now, this is still interesting, and it's still fun, but I feel like if I did, like, 5 or 10 years of, like, the same campaign,
Mhm.
there's probably gonna be a point where, like, it gets kind of flat. And I could see at that point being like, oh, I've already seen multiple characters go through full arcs and, like, retire peacefully. Now I want it to be more engaging, and I want more to be on the line. I think as I become more used to playing, I'll probably start liking character death as just a way to keep things more interesting.
I like that. That's a good answer. What about you, Nora?
I guess I've already hinted at, like, talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but I'm probably somewhere around a 3, maybe like 2.5, 3. Because the main thing for me is that I do like there to be stakes. And I also feel like even if a character does die sort of prematurely, like, that can be hard, but I feel like I'm not totally against it. Like, if I know, like I said, I was really attached to my first character, but I think I would understand if she died in our campaign. And maybe part of that, which I was just thinking about as we've been talking, is that, like, that campaign was sort of, it wasn't as roleplay heavy. I feel like as we've done in the games I've played with all of you, where we've tried to get more into, like, story side of it. And so maybe that's part of why I'm kind of used to that. Well, death is, it's like mechanically it makes sense, and I don't know, like, we didn't get quite as attached to our characters. I'm not sure, but I am kind of, I like it to be a possibility. And as a DM, I also like it. I try and make my combat and everything have those stakes, like, make it feel, even if I'm never gonna intentionally, like, try and kill your characters, but I want it to feel like there's some danger involved. So I just like that feel to the game, but I never want it to be meat grinder, because I don't find any joy in that. I feel like that's definitely, and then no one will want to get attached to their characters. And I just imagine that would be pretty frustrating to play if you keep dying over and over again.
Oh. How do you feel, Scout?
Yeah, I think I feel pretty similarly to Nora. Like, if I were to DM a game, I wouldn't ever want to intentionally like try to kill a character, but I wouldn't want there to be a game where characters can feel like they're safe in combat. Like kind of like whenever I play in your games, Ash, or even Sapp's games, there's always that risk of our characters falling and dying. And like even if we haven't like come all too close to that happening, even with Koya going down all the time.
Wow.
You say all the time. He's got like 1.5 times.
He's
1.5
fine. Thank you very
all the
much.
time, whatever. Even if we haven't come all that close to a character death, there's still always that tension that like that's a possibility, and like we always need to be like, we're not min-maxing here, but like you still have to like pay attention to what's going on, and there's still like that threat that you might actually lose your character this game. Yeah. I also think it'd be interesting to have a planned narrative death for a PC.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. That's kind of a question I'm curious of. Like, when would you actually want or like look forward to like a death? Are there narrative points where you're like, oh, actually, I would prefer my character to die over surviving?
I think when you're kind of like feel like you have more potential into playing another character, that's because I feel like you also have like some sort of like dynamic with your own character that you will think that it's very easy because you created it, right? To fall in love with the character, but what maybe the character doesn't really, it kind of falls flat in the party, or maybe I don't know, maybe it's too much of a cop-out to just assume that they could just die out of nowhere, right? But I feel like I mean, at the end of the day, it's your decision to keep playing the same character or not, right? And I feel like in those cases you can maybe talk to your DM about, well, I want to play another, I don't know, I want to play a spellcaster. I've been playing a whatever. Yeah, you want to change it up, and
I do want to put on that point though, right? Character death doesn't necessarily have to be the solution for that, right? Characters can retire or become like, you know, NPCs and allies of the party, like you have other NPC allies.
Like the dramatic sacrifice is always like great though.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
plot. Don't you love a juicy plot?
Those
where
are
everyone
hard to
dies?
plan though.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Usually happens in the moment when you're like, damn, this is like really down to the wire and I really want to make sure the party is all right, or this other character in the party comes out fine. I'm willing to risk it all or give it up.
You could sacrifice Koya for Ind. Just play priorities there.
Well, at that point, I will probably just
If
like
you have to choose, which one do you choose?
Oh my
somebody
gosh.
holding a god.
And Koya make donuts.
Donut.
Probably.
Okay,
Oh.
then he would pick Koya.
You basing the value of Koya's life on donut making?
Of course.
Goddamn.
How else will you do it?
Yeah.
That's
I
understandable.
Wait, what
Yeah.
kind of donuts? Is it like the bicycle donuts? Is that what it's called? Or is it like the pastry donuts?
Bicycle donuts.
Koya knows how to make
Like,
rice cake
the
with
whole-
donuts.
Oh, gotcha.
That's pretty good too.
Yeah,
Oh.
rice cakes are very valuable.
Color,
Anyways.
where are you 1 to 5?
On like the
This,
I want all of my characters to die or none of them
like
to
the
die.
game you want to play, right? 1 from like death not being on the table to meat grinder.
Well, no, definitely not Meeg Grinder. I feel
Mhm.
like that kills the vibe. That just makes me attached to my character, I think. Even though I will probably try to make it as complex as possible, as per usual, but I just have to have a glimpse of hope in life, you know. That's just, you cannot I don't think a character that has that looming onto them that close makes it like a good, compelling story. It could be, right? Maybe
It is
it's kinda
definitely a
like
different kind of story rather than usually the ones we play, which is more narrative with the characters at the very, it's where the focus is all on the characters.
Yeah, it's I feel like in like a normal campaign in which I plan to play the character for at least 10 sessions, right? I feel like, yeah, as I said in the beginning, that should be a possibility, right? And I want it to be a possibility because that's just life, and people die out of like nowhere, right? There's some planned deaths, then there's like surprise deaths, there's all kinds of death. But I don't want it to be a defining factor onto my character story, in which I feel like it goes beyond that in a way.
Yeah, you say like 2, 3.
Yeah, 2 or 3.
Nice.
Yeah. I do think it's important because it got brought up that we do mention for people who are interested in min-maxing and like the rule, like finding the rule breaking like strongest people, like obviously that style of D&D exists, and I think death would be a much more obvious and like necessary thing in that style of game as well.
Yeah.
As we're all narratively focused right now.
Yeah, I think we're all...
thinking... Yeah, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say we're all narratively focused, but the roots of D&D is actually more like hack and slash, video game stuff. Like first edition was basically, you're playing a video game, your character doesn't have as much of a backstory or like stuff going on, and that is definitely on the table.
Like, if I was playing that style, I, 1, would not create a backstory, and 2, would expect my character to die because I generally suck at that kind of game. So I would expect to go through 2 or 3, and I would have different ideas for each one.
You know what I was thinking? That maybe, like, just an idea of, like, in what situation you could like, what kind of campaign would it be if we play a campaign that you're actually gonna die? Like, no other chance. Is that maybe you're playing like a backstory of like a main campaign that you're playing at the time. Does that make sense? Like, maybe you actually get to like get in touch with the NPCs that we talked in the beginning, and you have like actually what they went through from your own eyes, instead of just letting the DM handle it, because sometimes that kind of creates that wall between you and the NPCs that you, I guess, have in your backstory, right?
I'm actually a huge fan of that. Like, one of the first times I created my own world, right after having idea for a campaign, I also had a folder in my Google Drive called Side Quests, and I wanted to like literally run one-shots for historical events that either ended well or poorly, where you went in knowing, oh, this character's gonna die.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
That's really cool.
That is interesting. I am down for that, and I'm down to write that will let me to write a really compelling story for it, instead of just, oh, I'm just gonna play this random ass generated character, and that, it actually gives me a motive to actually spend some time on the character instead of just having like a disposable one.
Yeah.
This is actually something, if we get the chance, that I wanted to talk about. I don't think everyone's answered the 1 to 5 question yet, but if we get back to, like, I was really curious what people think about how to handle if a PC does die, like, the different options that people might use in their campaigns for what players can do.
I definitely want to talk about that, because that's actually the next thing I have in that category. But Sapph, you didn't answer yet. 1 to 5.
Oh, I didn't?
Don't believe so.
Huh. Okay. I think generally would be the same as everyone. Like, Probably 3, 2.5. Definitely not 5 meat grinder and I think all of us agree because at the end of the day, or at least from what I can see, we all like that narrative aspect of D&D. And we want to build on it, and having that meat grinder setting makes it very difficult, in my opinion. But at the same time, peace can only last so long.
Yes. Tragedy.
Peace can wow. Well, peace can only last so long. There's always something that like throws a wrench into things. So like I personally, like as a player or as a GM, like NPC or PC, I'd still play to them a la vie a la mort. Like it doesn't matter what if they die. Like I'd be sad, sure, but I feel like it still adds more to the narrative. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to give my 2 cents as well, I am a 3. I might even be a 2 because, like everyone else here, I'm narratively like thinking, but at the same time, I put a lot of weight on death just because it has so much value, not just for the player, the character, but also all the other characters and players as well as the narrative as a whole. Starting from like a standpoint as a PC, I think I agree with an idea that was brought up earlier. I want things to be earned. I don't want to feel like I'm given stuff for free. Like if there are times when I feel like the DM is taking it easy, it lowers the value of whatever I accomplish, either as myself or with the party accomplishes. And so it's at least nice for me to have a feeling of like transparency that, okay, I'm earning this via the decisions I make, and creative actions I take as well as smart actions I take are being rewarded, rather than like I'm not being punished. And so even though I'm like for the campaigns I've really gotten into writing, like I have a Google Doc for each character with like, plans and stipulations and like notes to like, put stuff together. At the same time, I will kill characters. I can't go into it with little resolve because I want to make sure their victories and their like stories into becoming heroes are more worthwhile. So it's important for me to make sure you earn the stories as well as the accomplishments and the feelings of, being a hero. Yeah, I don't plan to go out killing characters, but if we get to the point where, all that's left is to pull the trigger, but everything else is lined up, I have resolved myself to do that, as I have done 8 times.
I've experienced. Yeah,
There's a bomb in the temple.
Oh my gosh. I feel like this kind of ties back into, Chrissy, what you were talking about a little bit earlier with like what kind of death people would be okay with, and I feel like it does just depend like where a character is in their arc. Like I think I could be okay with the character I keep talking about, Nahala, dying, like if she was at the right place, because even if it wasn't a heroic death, I feel like further on in her arc there are places where it's like, okay, she's had enough growth, like this would be okay.
Yeah. And I think
I feel like I'd be the same, like 10 more sessions in like K&D, like if Ken's whole like backstory comes out and he like grows, like I could get to a point where I'd be like, okay, I want to start someone with more turmoil so he can get retired.
Ramp it up.
Retire or die. One or the other. One or the other.
Only die if it's noble. He has to go out in a good way.
I think one of the things that also makes me more okay with death, even if, like, one of my characters dying, of course, is going to be tragic, but I also want to make sure I take responsibility to getting them to a just death, and so that, I don't know, for me, it makes me more okay with them dying, because I'm like, okay, I'm going to take responsibility to get them to a good place where their death means something.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a big question. I'm glad like we have like both a similar perspective, but also some people that like, I really like that Chrissy, like I remember when we first talked and you're like, Death, I don't know if I want to run it at all. And I have a DM that like runs for me that like is also like, I don't know if I can kill the party. And I'm just like, damn, let's talk about that.
It's good to hear that players themselves don't really like being too invincible, though. It's like, I would have assumed that, like, that was the easiest solution to make everyone happy. But if people don't like feeling like things are being handed to them, then, like, I gotta remember, that's not necessarily my DM style is the best way.
It definitely depends. Like, each player will be different, each character will be different.
Yeah.
But, it's like, it's really fun to earn something because it was hard and difficult and, there were risks.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
really
that's
glad
what
also. Oh, go ahead.
Feels like it's more satisfying in that way.
And so, at least for me, I'll be transparent with what you're getting yourselves into. And that way I will be, like, I will not shy away I will not pull punches.
It's a chaotic neutral player that's always appreciated.
I'm really glad though that like Chrissy, like you were talking about. Well, I guess you said that maybe at some point like you'd be okay with like character deaths for certain characters, but I know like I like that we can have that kind of like different kinds of games, like the game where nobody dies or has to die versus like the game where it's maybe more common because I have a friend I tried to get into D&D and they just like they really didn't like the idea, like they're not interested in it unless they have 100% agency and they don't want any of their characters to die ever, and so it just was not their thing. And so I don't know, it's nice that there's like some flexibility there, like some of it, like we can have different kinds of games and also like try out different styles.
Yeah, that's beauty of
you
D&D.
gotta find people who work with you.
There's so many different ways to play it.
Okay, but we're mostly narratively driven, right? So, but like, have any of us faced any meat grinder DMs then?
Really only worked with Ash as DM.
That's fair. I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think. Nora, was Jim kind of a meat grinder DM? Kind of.
I've been thinking about that since we've been talking. I feel like Jim's campaign was the most like
meat grinder-esque
that we've been in, but but it definitely wasn't like an actual meat grinder campaign. It was just
but it was
definitely
definitely
a dungeon and
rigorous.
It was the most it was the most classic dungeon that I've played. I know I got really lucky with my first campaign because I just stumbled into it. I didn't know any of the players or the DM, and they just like so happened to be pretty much on my level of like what I wanted from D&D game.
Nice.
I will say, like, on that point, like, the closest I got into meat grinder DM is being one myself, kinda, just because, like, for context, I come from a STEM field. Like, a lot of my friends are comp sci and engineering, and so they're a lot more mechanical based, and they come from a place of playing video games for, feeling that point of pleasure from mechanically getting something done. And so when I came out from that perspective, I just ran usually like a module, based on what I have in front of me. And some of those modules, like for one moment, I'm going to talk about Storm King's Thunder. That first chapter that gets you to level 5, there's so much stuff in there that it just throws you into combat right away. It throws you into a city that was infested with goblins, where all the townsfolk has been, like, they're not there anymore, and there's just goblins around every corner that you're supposed to fight off. And then before, I might have misread this, but before you can really rest, a bunch of bandits come into town. And then right after that, like a orc army comes banging at your door.
They really went for the like 6 combat interactions.
Wave after wave after wave.
Sounds so much fun.
To the first
Try
one,
it.
just cower in the corner.
Ash, can you DM for us?
That's what I'm doing, isn't it?
No.
Do it tomorrow.
Okay, yes, but can we play a campaign like that?
Were you a meat
Play
grinder?
Annihilation.
Combat after combat after combat.
Yeah, let's go. Let's see who dies last.
I'm Nora.
So, survival of the fittest is what you're saying.
Oh my god.
Battle Royale, but D&D. I was thinking,
Yeah.
like, for my first, if I ever DM, like, my first thing would be something very mechanical based and less narrative. Since, like, improv is probably my weakest point. And I feel like I'd sooner learn the entire PHP than improv skills.
Yeah, I
I'm the
feel that.
opposite, where like I came up with my own storyline and like I have all the like different hooks and like all the different things you have to puzzle out, and then combat comes and I'm like, I don't know, like roll some dice. Here's a ogre, just have at it. Just leave me out of it completely, please. It's like my instinct.
Well, one advice I want to give kind of that, because at first I was just like, yeah, let's just throw in combat every so often because it's a staple of D&D. I realized combat, like mechanically, is a plot device in the story that should be, the characters are risking their lives in this combat. It's something that pushes them to the point of like, death is on the line usually in combat, where it can't be just a throwaway combat. And at first, that's what I did. I'm running PNPD, which is Tomb of Annihilation, Nora, you mentioned, right? Because that starts out as just like, okay, combat in the jungle, getting to the tomb, eventually combat. But after running stuff like that for a while, I was just like, doesn't feel good. I want combat to have weight, both narratively as well as mechanically. So, like, one thing that might make combat more fun for you, Chrissy, would be just like, what is the narrative value of each combat you run?
That's a good point. Yeah, and I mean, I even tried to make up my own homebrew to make it more interesting to me, adding in like more like items and like more things outside of like damage dealing actions that like you can do.
Yeah, that was fun.
Like, yeah, a lot of things are gonna be like, oh, you just get items this way. If you don't fight, then you don't get gold or items, and you're forever poor and you can't upgrade your items. Like, it's kind of the main thing that I'm using it for now.
Yeah. On that note of like, new systems and whatnot, I did, for like a final fun little topic, want to talk about homebrew and other systems that you may have drawn inspiration from, may have run, that has different ways of looking at death or different workarounds.
I can go because
Yeah.
I'm the DM who ran like stupid mechanics of everything. So since I run a modern campaign, I was taking a look at some of the modules that I sort of maybe stole from a random Google Drive, and came upon this document called Injuries. And in a sense, its mechanics were, since that module itself was based around Pathfinder actually. It had some very wicked stuff, like I think it said a critical damage in excess, like that's beyond its constitution score, and if you're reduced to 0 hit points but not killed outright, you suffer an injury. And I didn't like that. so I took that and I changed it. So it's basically kind of like, if you fall unconscious, there is a chance of sustaining a critical injury, which in a sense is also kind of up to the dice gods and RNGesus, but I do like the idea of not just like character death, but this idea of suffering a sort of injury, a reminder of what sort of hardship that your character faced.
Yeah, risking injury versus straight out death.
Yeah, like there's risk of injury and there's risk of death, and kind of combined together, they kind of form that looming chance of, oh shit, I might get actually fucked this battle. So that's what I hope to implement. I don't think anybody has reached 0 yet. I don't think. So
Yeah, none of us are
yeah,
close. We're
Getting
fine.
there.
that's something
I
I'm
haven't taken
excited.
any damage yet.
But yeah, that's something that I'm very looking forward to seeing how it goes and seeing how it runs.
I'll say I love the injuries came up because I have worked with injuries myself in terms of like trying to implement it as a way of like, you know, other things being at risk in combat and giving it more like long lasting, you know, impact. Oh, I've got back and forth and things from like, at first I made it like, okay, yeah, like if this happens, then that could result in injury, and that just became so much to track during a combat where a bunch of other numbers are flying around. And then I did a thing where like, hey, if you, I have one homebrew rule that I've used and finally I've stopped using, where if you go unconscious, right, you come back with a point of exhaustion, right? So it's not just, you don't feel as much rubber bandy of just like, oh, I'm awake, oh, I'm back, right? It does feel like a clock. But that was also punishing, and then I gave the option of like, okay, you can take this point of exhaustion, or it can roll for an injury. And I was like, okay, giving the players options, I like this, okay, maybe this is good. No one ever chose the injury.
Yeah. The way, talking about injuries
Permanent,
still,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I never got a chance to try this out, which is too bad, but the first DM that Sapph and I played together with, Jim, I did talk to him some about like death and how he did that, and I thought it was kind of interesting, and I wish I'd gotten a chance to try it out, which is that all of that stuff like injury he applied to resurrection rituals. So if your character actually died, then he had a couple different, like there was some sort of consequence. Either you came back with a permanent injury, or memory loss, or even the like using reincarnation. I think there is a spell for that in D&D.
Mm-hmm.
To talk about implementing that as just a mechanic of resurrection. So I liked that there was, the consequence didn't happen until you really died. But I don't know how that would work because I never got a chance to like see that in game.
Yeah. I did want to also ask everyone, like, since we're on the topic of homebrew, like, is there, even from people that don't DM, is there any like mechanical aspect of death or that you would like either don't like or have thought about, like, hey, what if it worked like this? Because right, we brought up injuries as a way of like, you know, other things at risk besides death.
I have given it some thought about, you know, kind of to make it more, in a sense, realistic, like your actions do have like consequences, especially when you have injuries. Like you would have to take kind of like a permanent like disadvantage roll on certain things like that. I have yet to try it. I'm kind of curious how it works. I don't have any specific or personal experiences with it, but I'm pretty much open to like challenging myself, especially now that I've done some campaigns in one shots. Just want to explore like, you know, those more complicated mechanisms.
Hell yeah. I myself have like tried, like, one of the main things about, you know, just like going to zero or like hit points and death in general is like you want the stakes of that combat to influence things further down the line, like via injuries, via like, oh shit, I need to be more careful, right, not to go unconscious. But one of the things is, right, like if you survive the combat, you heal all the way back up, nothing even happened, you carry on with your day. How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah.
You sleep off your injuries. One day, one night, and everything is fine.
Your arm
It's
regrows.
convenient,
Your
but
arm
storytelling wise,
regrows.
it's not very good. Yeah.
Like
very
game
gimmicky.
wise, it's cool because it's like, oh shit, like you're fine now. But narratively, it's a little disappointing. In the sense that, like, shit, like I'm covered in cuts, like, and these suddenly heal back in one day? Question mark? Like magic. In D&D, magic is a thing, unlike our piss poor real life, and that gives some sort of explanations to how you can like heal back. But in the case of rest, it's, I don't know, it's mechanically it's great, and as just purely feeling as a player, it just feels nice, but narratively it just doesn't really make sense in my opinion.
The way I describe it is, it doesn't give you any like narrative tools to work with. Like even like having half an HP bar, even though it's not like anything crazy, it's a narrative tool. You're like, damn, my character is like, tired out, he's not feeling his best, I can roleplay with this, and it's a tool that you suddenly have. And the secret might be that you could have always done that, just like roleplay your character as being exhausted from that combat, even if their HP pool isn't that like bad. But like especially for new players, you need tools to work with based off stuff that's in front of you, like HP.
Do you feel though, in terms of like injuries and stuff, I'm not a fan of the permanent ones. Like if I'm playing my character and then suddenly they lose an arm and I can no longer ever use my sword dual wielded, like that can be frustrating. It's like it feels similar to a death, but like it's just more like I'm still playing this character, but I can't even play him like the way I want to.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of them all like eventually, no matter what, like unless your character dies, you can get back to full health. And I feel like I'm not really interested in a system that doesn't allow that. But I do think the whole like long rest literally fixes everything can be a little bit too fast. Like if you want to do those kinds of things, like now you have this issue until you go back to town, which in some of these campaigns like can take a while. Or like you have it for like a longer period of time, or you have to find something to fix it, like you have some sort of curse that needs a certain like antidote. Those can be taken really interesting ways because they kind of make their own side quests.
Yeah. I do feel like this gets in the territory of balancing narrative with like making the mechanics too hard. Like Sapph, you said a long rest mechanically is pretty nice. Like I can just go to bed and I get all my spell slots back. But I do think I would like to see some like homebrew that changes that. I mean, I'm looking forward, Ash. We talked a little bit about your like full rest, long rest stuff, and I think I'm looking forward to trying that out because I feel like that's a nice balance where like it's not too punishing, but it kind of gives a little more narrative room for characters to actually like feel the results of a battle.
Yeah, on that topic, kind of like I've worked with like one of the things I did before, right? Like if you go down, you get a stack of exhaustion, and that doesn't get rid of unless you rest and like have like good accommodations. You need at least it stays with you for the rest of the day versus short resting, coming back up or whatnot. My problem with that became that it is a debilitation that takes away a player's tools that they could use for like to interact and just have fun in general, right? Having disadvantage on ability checks, like mechanically it gives you something to play around with narratively, but it's debilitating in that for some players, right, it keeps them from doing stuff they want, kind of like how Chrissy mentioned injuries, right? It doesn't let you play the character you want, kind of.
Yeah.
And so then I realized, hey, hit points is a good tool because being at 1 hit point, being at 100 hit points, you operate the exact same way. You can play your character the exact same way, right? And it doesn't change anything about making checks or anything, right? You might be scared more so, right? But it doesn't change your character mechanically. And so that's how I realized, like, okay, let's just tweak the rest system as a way of, like, you don't get all your HP back all the way. Like, and I'm getting to actually see that well in Kin and Dread. Because you guys...
Been so long.
Yeah, you guys haven't taken... At first, you didn't take a long rest at all, and then you went from one combat into the temple where everything was burning down until finally getting a long rest, and then, wait, you're not even full from that. And then you're like, oh shit, we're going to a dungeon now.
I don't have any hit dice.
Yeah. And so, like,
it does raise the stakes, which is nice.
Yeah, it makes it very exciting.
It raises the stakes, and then it like makes sure, like, from that first time you fought that Smolderkin to all the way now and until you get out of this, right? It all becomes inclusive to like one arc versus like each day feeling separate.
Yeah, like this definitely. It also like gives us a sense of urgency. Like we're not just using short rests out to like get back our key points or whatever. Like
we can't just like run in at peak health anymore. We have to like stamina.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why I tend to find one shots to be not as tense feeling, because like it's not just about, oh, if I lose my character it's not a big deal because they were meant to be a one-shot character. It's also because typically in one-shots there's never a chance for a long rest, just because like there isn't enough happening in the game.
Yeah, you don't use
Not
your
enough time.
abilities that
Yeah.
fast.
Or if there is a long rest, I feel like it's something that was planned for by the DM, or like players just ask for one and then we just get it, and then we just all get our resources back, and then it's like we just reset completely, and it's very gimmicky in a sense.
If you guys didn't have to race Kenya in the dungeon underneath, right? Then there's no reason to just not take your time and rest as you go.
Yeah.
I want to take my time. I'm so torn. See, I have trouble because I still have that naive, like, I want to do everything
Mhm.
kind of feeling, so that pertains to death and with, like, resting and stuff like that, where I want to have my cake and eat it too. I really
Yeah.
want to just see everything and then still have the perfect story lined up for me when I eventually get around to it.
Mhm.
And I feel like
That's
most people in the campaign have more realistic expectations.
I feel the same. I want to do everything. I want to fight that fish.
yeah.
I
I
do.
want-
Oh my god, the fucking fish!
I do want to fight it, but I feel like it's gonna be rough, guys.
But yeah, like,
We're
can swim.
struggling already, and we have not only the fish, we're like battling this giant monkey. So I don't know.
I
what
have
to do.
health packs, like, I can patch everyone up, it'll be fine.
Oh, health packs don't give you more hit points, please.
Each of our actions
They
have
give you, like,
consequences. Like, whether we fight a fish or take our last stand, like, between, like, and this connects back to character death too, or like storyline, like, each of what our actions do gives consequence. And the fact that it gives consequence is what drives our actions forward and what makes the plot so interesting.
My
Yeah.
goal is your decisions have weight. Everything you do has weight, right? It's not like it can be dispensed, it doesn't matter, someone else will do it, right? You guys are the heroes of your story, and every choice you make will change what you do going forward.
So if I choose to eat a cookie instead of a snickerdoodle, the world will end.
Yeah, butterfly effect.
Fuck.
Be careful.
Before I forget, I really did
Don't
want to
wait
get some
too hard.
people's opinions on the I can't remember. I think this was a Matt Colville video.
Hmm.
He was talking about. I guess there's a couple questions in one. But how do you guys feel about, like, if a player does die, taking over a piece? I guess this was mentioned a little bit, but like taking over an NPC in the campaign, or what I was really interested in is there is a Matt Colville video where he talks about if there's the possibility of a TPK, like taking a break and letting the party try a whole new set of characters, and then bringing those characters in to help the old party. So like then you get to try out new characters.
Like right before a TPK happens, right? You pause it there and go to another storyline.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool.
This is very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I actually recently rewatched that video in preparation for this discussion, and I was like, that's a really creative and a really like narratively purposeful way of going about it. TPKs, I feel like, are different from character death because I feel like those means a lot of people fucked up, right? Like the DM had to fuck up something, the players had to fuck up something. It's like I feel like TPKs are never planned for.
Definitely, that's like something has gone very wrong.
Yeah.
But I was really curious because, like, now that I've thought about it more, I think that would be really fun. But I feel like as a DM, I would have a hard time. I would be worried that my players wouldn't be on board with that idea of like pausing and trying out a whole new set of characters, especially if they were really attached to the characters they already had. Like, I'd be worried about how to implement that.
I think a good conversation is just in order, honestly, in that case.
That's a good point.
Like, like it's not gonna be easy, but like there are, like, especially if it's like pausing before some catastrophic accident that accidentally kills everybody, to like going to a different perspective and like exploring before like meeting up at that same time point. I don't know, some people might be on board, some people might not be, but I feel like if that's the case, like just talking about it, and deciding where to go forward from like that point would probably be the best, not just for like, you know, the players and everybody, but also like for the story. It might also be like, if you're gonna go forward with the TVK, at least everybody's agreed to it.
Yeah, communicate.
Should be discussed for sure.
Everybody agrees. Yeah, we fucked them. All right, let's kill everybody.
Yeah, like I do think that idea is very clear. Like you said, Nora, it's very hard to implement as a DM. You definitely need to reach out and communicate with the players, see if it's even something they're willing to do, and then, like, I don't know, like if it's a TBK scenario, that's a whole orchestra. But you also mentioned like having a player play an NPC. I could definitely see that, because it's definitely like players have had, you know, characters in their backstory that they end up turning into a PC down the line. I think Kassan was one of those, and
Yep.
Your new character color B is kind of becoming like that, stemming off Cordelia's backstory.
Yeah.
So like that's perfectly fine, and like it seems like a great way to add more life into a character that you might have thought only briefly about.
And also gave me more perspective in Cordelia's like behavior too. It allowed me to see her in the eye of this character that is very different from Cordelia. Cordelia is very positive and very encouraging of people. This character has been through so much. B has been through the worst of the worst. So seeing her in a way, I still haven't played V myself, but I thought a lot about how they see life in general, and it's interesting how Cordelia kind of falls into their story too, right? Because it's not only, as I told you, Ash, it's like I don't want to make the story just like a
Yeah, just
like
not like a foil for Cordelia's.
exactly. I wanted them to have like their own story.
Yeah.
But yeah, related to her, right? To Cordelia.
That's kind of the magic in also DMing, because when you have other characters and NPCs, right? You don't want them to, like, you want them to work together to create a greater narrative of the world, right? You don't want necessarily one character to be overshadowed by another. You want one NPC to overshadow another NPC. You want them to all create a world together to like play in. That's the same sort of feeling color.
Yeah, exactly. I love them equally.
It is really fun also as a DM and a player to see, like, even though character death is very sad, it's fun to see like NPCs or backstory characters get brought into it and like get to see them have their own like growth and stuff. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
In a sense, their legacy still lives on.
Yeah. Like I said, Ira's got like 4 or 5 more siblings. So.
My god!
She's got 2 parents. And if they all die, you can play Rind.
God damn it. Okay, I will take you up on
Wait, that's kind of smart. Let me go make more characters with a ton of siblings and connections.
I mean, we're
You want
talking
to
about
back
a
up?
medieval setting in which is there condoms? I'm sorry.
My god.
There's
That's
no
a world building
TV.
point I haven't gotten to yet.
There's
There's
probably
no
magical
TVs,
contraception
there's-
somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of babies everywhere.
True.
No, that makes
Sorry.
me feel really bad about everything I've made about Iron Kassan.
You're welcome.
Babies, man.
We'll just sit on that.
Yeah.
We started with death and we ended on life.
Well, that's
and
the
babies.
thing.
We've come
Just
full
a
circle to birth.
Circle of life.
I think
It's a circle of life.
that's an
Yeah, no
amazing way
copyright.
to close our first episode. I'll probably end the stream, but you know, I'm free to keep talking because I love talking about this shit. And this was a lot of fun, guys. Thank you for, you know,
Yeah,
joining.
this is really fun.
Yeah, thank you for coordinating.
Yeah, I can't believe we actually did this. Like, this was so much fun. I've always wanted to just, talk about D&D.
I want to talk about more more topics.
I know there's so many
yeah.
topics we touched on that like
Episode 2.
need their own episode.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
If you guys have any
when
other
we talk about
add to the
when we
list.
talk about character creation, it's gonna be so much fun. We're all like very different. I
Different.
believe.
We're so different.
Yeah.
We're all
I'm
so
really curious
fucking
about that.
different. Bonnie with her barbarians.
Oh my god.
Barbarians are pretty awesome.
We'll definitely
It's
have
pretty awesome.
opportunities to pick each other's for our like philosophies about character creation and anything else related to D&D. Definitely gonna organize all of these soon. But for now, Adventures Kindling 1, we did it. Ooh.
Hell yeah.
Heck yeah.
Good job, everybody.
Hey.